Hi, my name is Dominic. I'm your host for the Sit, Walk, Work podcast, the show about paying attention. In today's episode, I'm picking up from where we started a little earlier in the month around this idea of going on a journey. I've been reading and taking time to study Mary Oliver's poem of the same name, The Journey, and it has opened me up to seeing where I am as far as my journey in this life and where I'm headed and what I'm doing. And so I'd like to take an opportunity and open up with her poem, The Journey by Mary Oliver. And then we'll talk a little bit about what I've kind of learned on my journey in studying this great text, this beautiful work of art. So the poem reads as follows. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough, and a wild night, and a road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. A lot of the life that we get or that we create has already been crafted for us. It can be hard to think independently. So many perceptions and points of views get overlaid into our psyche that we lose sight of kind of who we are and what matters to us. My meditation practice has shown me that there is an extreme amount of power in emptiness. And that at the center of this very active world that we all participate in, there is a core emptiness to it. And I don't say that in some nihilistic way. I mean that things arise out of that emptiness, that there is a spaciousness that is able to hold all of life's experiences and their various forms and perceptions and changing natures. And if you think about a child, a baby, they are empty. They don't have any precepts or preconceptions about what should or shouldn't be. They get filled from the world around them. But they start out with a pretty blank slate. So when I was learning to crawl, this is a story that my mother tells me because obviously I wouldn't know that it happened to me. I know that it happened to me, but I don't have a recollection of it. So when I was learning to crawl, I was like most young babies. I was super curious. And at the time, I managed to get myself wedged behind a giant record player. And you're like, how could you get wedged behind a giant record player? Because I'm old enough to remember when record players were big enough to take up a considerable amount of space in a room. And when I got behind the record player, I grabbed the electrical cord and I stuck it in my mouth and I started to chew on it. My mother was doing something in the other room. At those times, parents actually left their kids in other rooms unattended, which was fine. Obviously, in my case, maybe not so much. Shout out to my mom, who I love deeply, and don't come for her for being a horrible parent. She was perfectly fine, as was I. Although I did get electrocuted in this case, and I survived. And look, here's the deal. I'm a parent now, and I completely understand why this is okay. And if you're not a parent, you just don't understand. It is hard. There is a lot going on when you're a parent. And sometimes you make mistakes. And all you could ever ask for is the grace that your mistakes do not hurt or harm your child in a way that cannot be reconciled. And if you don't have kids, you don't get that. You think everything should be perfect. But when you're a single mom and there's nobody to watch your child and you need to make lunch or you need to make dinner, what are you supposed to do? Right? You figure it out. And maybe that means, they get out of your sight every now and again. So, needless to say, I'm fine. I'm talking to you now. I have lived a very productive life and I have no scars about this. But fun fact, I learned on that day that electricity hurts. And I don't go sticking things in electrical sockets as an adult because of it. And that's what I mean. That's the moral of that long story that I just gave. And that is, when we were first born, we were born pretty empty. And then we pick up things along the way. But what we also do is we lose. We lose that initial voice, the one that had us curious enough to even know what this was. The one that, in my case, had me put a cord in my mouth, not knowing it was dangerous. The one that gets you to touch the hot stove, or the one that gets you to ask the question that makes logical sense based on what you know, but yet hurts someone's feelings. So then what you know has to be not said because that would be bad. And then you have to reconcile the complexities of this world. And over time, you lose sight of yourself, of that voice. And so this poem, to me, is about finding that voice again, about reconciling with those parts of you. And it all starts with taking a first step. And usually that first step is birthed out of discomfort, because discomfort kind of pushes us towards change. Our species is and loves to naturally just settle in. Settle into whatever is comfortable, provided that they aren't injured and it doesn't hurt. And it's only when the discomfort starts to build, like it's filling up the cup. I'm a little discomfort. I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm a little more uncomfortable. And I'm a little more uncomfortable. And then finally, I'm so uncomfortable that I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And that's your first step. That's the first step in your journey. I used to smoke like 10 years ago when I was in my first marriage. After we got divorced, I quit. Like almost to the day my divorce papers were signed, I just didn't smoke anymore. I decided and I moved in that direction. That was my first step on that journey. But the next step was not something I had planned. I knew that I was likely to fall back into old patterns and habits if I allowed myself. And so rather than do that, I figured maybe I should consider a better habit than smoking so I don't fall back into that previous habit. So I took up distance running. No big deal. I started with some 5Ks, graduated to some 10Ks, did some half marathons, did a marathon, did more marathons, did a lot of marathons, and then some ultra marathons. And it just turned into this entire whole new lifestyle. I'd always lifted weights growing up, so I wasn't a stranger to working out. Just over the years being with my partner at the time, it wasn't something I did enough of. in hindsight being 2020, these are all things I've come to learn that were signs that this person was not maybe the most compatible for me. But we'll save that for a separate conversation. That's the thing about taking a journey. You might start off with one direction in mind. Like I wanted to quit smoking because I saw that it was no longer healthy or purposeful for me. But never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that it would have led to me running as many marathons that I did, or led to me running ultra marathons, or introduced me to yoga and meditation and put me on a path that put me on this microphone that put me in your ear right now. That wasn't part of the plan. And see, that's the thing. We sometimes get so focused on the plan that we can't even see what's unfolding in front of us and the value of it. Because we want to know the next step before the next step happens, but sometimes the next step doesn't happen until you complete the place you're in. The path is literally unfolding. As you're walking, before your foot hits the ground, the next step appears. And it requires you to have, dare I say it, faith. Faith that when you go to put your foot down, there'll be something underneath it to catch you. It's taken me at least half of a life to realize that, yeah, that's true. Something will catch me if I move in the direction, into the path. But how do I know that I'm on the path, Dom? Yeah, it's a good question. How do you know? You got to get good at listening. That's why you got 2 ears. Not just so you can listen to the people talking to you, but so that you can spend some time listening to yourself. Because you now have the lovely responsibility of unpacking all of those voices that filled up your cup until you get to the place that's always been there. Back to the voice that has never left you. And you might be like, well, I don't want to do that. It's not my fault. I didn't ask for all these other people's opinions and thoughts, and now you want me to decipher? Hey, man, look. You're responsible. You have a responsibility to choose what you do with the inputs. That's a real hard, that's a hard one, right? Because I am not trying to discount anyone's pain, trauma, and not trying to discount my own pain and trauma. No one deserves to have bad things happen to them. Yet after they have happened to you, they are 100% yours to deal with. Because no one can unring the bell. And you have to decide what and how they will shape your life. Because they will shape your life. If you ignore them, they'll shape your life. If you interact with them poorly or negatively, they'll shape your life. If you choose to move from a place of growth, responsibility, and giving, they'll shape your life. And if you do nothing and crawl inside yourself, they'll shape your life. It is only what we do with the things that we encounter that determines who we become. And that's probably what I think every mystic, every story, every religion, every philosophy, all of them are saying the same words in different phrases, in different ways, trying to get it through our heads that it's our responsibility to design this thing we call life. and that we can make it a masterpiece or we can make it horrific. But no one else is going to make it for us. There's nobody out there behind the scenes pulling the strings. It's us. It's the individual. It's the collective. It's both. One of the things that I discovered when looking at this concept of being on a journey was another version of the poem, The Journey. This one's by David White, and his perspective is slightly different. And so I'd like to share that with you. Above the mountains, the geese turn into the light again, painting their black silhouettes on an open key. Sometimes everything has to be inscribed across the heavens so you can find the one line already written inside of you. Sometimes it takes a great sky to find that first bright and indescribable wedge of freedom in your own heart. Sometimes, with the bones of the black sticks left when the fire has gone out, someone has written something new in the ashes of your life. You're not leaving, even as the light fades quickly now. You're arriving. You're arriving. That's a powerful sentence. Instead of thinking we need to go on a big journey to find something, maybe we're just arriving to a place that's always been there. Like we're chipping away at the marble to reveal the David underneath, right? And yet we live our life in the complete opposite. We think if we know what it looks like underneath the marble, then we'll create the beautiful statue. I think the answers unfold as the work happens. There's a dance there, that dance between action and faith. I take action with the faith that the next action will appear. The great nature will show me the way, as long as my personal nature doesn't override my ability to hear great nature speaking to me. The journey isn't just about setting a goal and trying to achieve it, building a life and trying to create it. It's about everything we do. It is woven into the fabric of the human experience. That all things ebb and flow. Yin and yang, light and dark, up and down, happy, sad. That these opposites dance through our lives, and we are in the center, mediating it all, choosing the path over and over again. So I have to ask you, or at least put it in the ether for consideration. How are you taking your journey? Are you just out here not even knowing it's going down, clueless to the fact that these things are unfolding? Is there some intention behind your choices and decisions you're making? Are you stuck in a place of fear or a place of depression or a place of anxiety where it's the only thing you know and feel, and yet there is a tremendous color palette available to your human experience? I can't solve anything on this podcast. I am here to provide a perspective and some things to consider. And one of those perspectives and things I'd ask you to consider is how can you put more richness into your life, add some new ingredients to your recipe, start to experience the fullness of your journey. So that you can come to know that the happiness that you seek has been buried in there all along. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I invite you to check out my Substack, where we are building a community of like-minded individuals to discuss all topics related to the idea of paying attention. I hope to see you there. But until then, with metta may you be well.